Well, we've reached the end of the week again. It feels like time is moving fast. It's Friday. It is Saturday pre-flight, 10 p.m. Eastern. Your jump point to the weekend, to good content of Saturday morning cartoons, Sci-Fi Saturday, and a long weekend of enjoyment. Which I say, get out there for a little bit, get some air, get some vitamin D in there. You know, they're finally taking down some of the restrictions. Get out there, have some fun. You know, have fun again. Thank you for tuning in. What is on today's show? Well, we're starting off today with basically the dark side of Disney. That's right. Disney had a dark side before they ever bought Star Wars. There was a time when the film industry used to take chances with movies. We're going to be discussing two movies that wasn't successful, but they were decent movies that still today people still talk about on there. One of them did get a remake on there. The other one was written by a famous writer that you'll know very well when we say the name, who's made many great stories out there. Then in our off the shelf, we'll be doing the Mel Brooks collection again. We'll be discussing a movie where basically in the script has only one word of dialogue. That's right, folks, one word of dialogue. Can you guess the movie on there? Then we'll be checking in with Svengoolie, because basically we will be stirring up a pot full of monsters in this week's Svengoolie movie of the week, which basically a lot of people don't talk about. It happens to be a good movie in itself. Then finally we get to your comments. We get to what you're feeling this week. All this on this edition of Saturday Pre-Flight. But first, let's get to the Fast Five. Well, this week on the Fast Five, let's look at the box office numbers. A new king on the box office was crowned this past week. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, has conjured up $24 million in the box office, leading it on top, followed by the previous week's top, Quiet Place Part 2, which has now been slated for a sequel, bringing in another $19 million, which for Quiet Place brings it up to the total to almost $90 million gross on there. In third came Cruella de Vil with about $11 million, which this is about almost over for this movie. $43 million, even with a sequel coming. Universal's Spirit Untamed came in fourth with $6.1 million, and Disney Raya, The Last Dragon, rounded up the top five with $1.2 million. Sits at $53.5 million total gross. You know, we're seeing now that the box office is starting to move back to where it should be when you have a movie like The Conjuring. Even though The Conjuring was released both in theatrical and on HBO Max, which my wife got to see the other night, and she enjoyed it. So, you know, coming from my wife who loves horror films, she loved The Conjuring better than the second one, she says. Continuing in the movie news, Zack Snyder was on Tyrone Magnus's YouTube channel just recently, an interview talking about all things movies. One thing about one of the questions that was asked, Magnus asked about the Snyderverse, and Snyder had elaborated that basically Warner hasn't spoken to him about it. He hasn't gotten any calls. It's been pretty much radio silence from the WB movies on there, or AT&T, or whatever you want to call the company on there, because basically, you know, we don't know who owns it anymore now. It's like WB Discovery or whatever it is, but pretty much the communication level is pretty much been quiet. Going to show that basically, you know, WB doesn't really care. They never cared about the DC universe. They never cared about DC Comics and stuff like that. It goes to show you, you know, why people still saying to support this. It is a company that just, you know, used to be really good, and now they're just circling the horses, hoping to survive, as they're now word that they're going to be cutting more employees as the merger with WB and Discovery gets closer and closer, if it gets approved. Over at Netflix, on Tuesday, they announced that basically Yoko Kanno, who was the genius behind the Cowboy Bebop soundtrack, will be producing original tunes for the live adaptation of Cowboy Bebop. Also, on top of that, the series will be released sometime in the fall on Netflix. So it's some good news for some people. My jury's still out whether this is going to be good or bad. There are some things that I already touting that I probably not going to like the way they've been talking about this online, from certain characters, how they're going to do certain characters. One thing that we saw on a couple of articles, and we discussed it on Memo with the show, Japan doesn't like the live adaptations the West has been doing on that. The only one, and we say this over and over again, what's the best movie out there that they've done? Alita Battle Angel. Why? Because it was done by somebody that basically likes anime, and that was Robert Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez happens to be a fan of this genre, and if he could do more of them, they appreciate it. And if he could do it the same way, because a lot of the American directors can't be trusted with these, and I'm not calling them IP. They're not intellectual properties. They are stories created by very talented people. There are a lot of talent out there, and they treat it like crap. They really truly treat it like crap. On television, or online, however you want to put it, FX has released their summer premieres. We are going to be getting a lot of content coming from FX, which is now owned by Disney. American Horror Stories will be returning with two series, American Horror Story and American Horror Stories, which is slated for sometime in August. We also have Archer returning late August as well. Curious to see how they're handling the death of Jessica Walter. She's the main character on the show. And also, they've changed the name of the agency. Now it's IIA, from what I understand. International Intelligence Agency is what they're calling it now. Also, we have What We Do in the Shadows will be returning back in September, right after the summer. And finally, we hope that they do this well, Why the Last Man has been slated for September 13th on FX on Hulu. Most of this stuff will be available on Hulu itself. Some of it will be just on Hulu. I haven't got the full details of that, but looks like it's going to be like a little mix of the FX network as they're phasing out the FX channel. I mean, now most people don't realize is FX is moving into Hulu. And, the eventuality, like I said, broadcast television, other than the classics, is on its way out. All you have to do is look at what's going on. And we said this before, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney Channel, those channels are on their way out, and plenty of others. They don't have the programming like they used to. They've become political hacks. And finally, well, looks like we are getting a reboot. This one, Lloyd Kaufman has sold out, and that's what I guess say is the title. Legendary Pictures is rebooting the original Toxic Avenger movie, and it will be starring Peter Dinklage, Jacob Tremblay, and Elijah Wood. Can you guess which one will be Toxie? I'll give you a hint. It's not Elijah Wood. I mean, this movie, I love the original on there. Lloyd Kaufman, which is part of the company that he's had for a long time. It's made some great movies on there. You've had a lot of people who've worked with him for many years. The Trauma Company. He's gone over the top on a lot of his stuff. I mean, the guy was even knocked off of either Facebook or Twitter recently. But the Toxic Avenger was always one of my favorites. Surf Nazis Must Die was another one of my favorites. And there's a whole slew on there. But we're going to be expecting a Toxic Avenger movie, and Elijah Wood will be playing the villain in this, just to give you a hint on there. And it will be nabbed by it's been nabbed by Legendary Pictures. you know what Legendary does with some of the IPs. So that's our Fast Five for this week. Well, we always look back in history of film that basically out there have been a lot of films that were very good. Some were excellent. Some were Oscar material. Some have been lost to history. Others have been forgotten because some people touted them. It wasn't that great. But there are those out there today that are looking back at that part of the time period in the industry that, there were some films out there that had promise and that was well made. And there were some films that you would not believe that certain studios made. When you look at Disney and what they're making, a lot of people go, well, they've never had an R-rated movie. They never had this. They never had that. And that's all incorrect. Disney was a large company with many different divisions like Touchstone Films and many others that have been creating a various amount of content throughout the years and decades that that Disney has been in existence. When you tout back to the late 70s and 80s, you tout to, you remember The Black Hole, you remember Tron. There were a couple films in there, Sword in the Stone and stuff like that. But there's a couple of films, in fact, we're going to talk about two of them tonight, that were on the dark side of Disney. Yes, that's right. Disney did some dark movies, and we're talking a horror, thriller, suspense type films. And this was in the 80s itself. The movies didn't do well. They didn't gross well in the box office. They starred a good cast of actors. Legendary actors were in this movie. One of them has been remade within the last decade or so. Didn't do well. That same film technically has two separate endings. And we'll discuss this further. The first movie we want to talk on the list, and discussing what we're at now, is a 1980 movie film, The Watcher in the Woods. The Watcher in the Woods is an very interesting movie based on the same novel that it was called on there. The movie stars Lynn Holly Johnson, Kylie Richards, Carol Baker, David McCullen, Benedict Taylor, Francis Culca, Richard Picasso, and the marvelous great Bette Davis. Yes, that's right. The great Bette Davis was in this movie. The main premise is that basically a family moves into a country home where some strange events that link back to an occult events from your past where a girl went missing. And the family starts to experience sort of a ghostly effect of the girl being throughout where they're living. And this is shot. It's shot very well. It's shot very well. A lot of people complain of the way it was shot, the cinematography, some of the special effects. You got to remember, this was 1980. 1980. We were at the pinnacle point where computer effects were very hard to do at the time. You had Tron, which was a basic point, and then you had another movie called The Last Starfighter, which they when they created the special effects for that, the entire what they call it, the ship effects that basically were all CGI'd. you had to use a lot of computers back then just to render everything. The amount of computer, I mean, today you don't, what we're using to render things. I mean, when you look at our programming here on QTCast TV, Saturday Pre-Flight, and of course the other show, Matt with the Show, we use one computer to render everything. Sometimes we may use the laptop to assist us, but mostly everything is done on one. And think of it back then. I mean, if you're using 10, 12, 15 computers just to render something for about 5 minutes, think about that for a second. And in a way, some of the special effects on this, yeah, it was cheesy. I heard that some things were, when they went to the DVD version, was cleaned up when they remastered this into DVD version. The acting itself, it's really good. It's dark. If you haven't seen this yet, you'll be able to get it on DVD for about $10. I would advise you to purchase this on there. I mean, some people go, it's not the greatest movie in the world. It wasn't the greatest movie in the world, but it was a great premise. It was a very good premise, very well done, very well performed on there. Now, we're going to do a little spoiler here. The ending of this film, there are not one, but two endings. The ending that you see, and I'm told the DVD has both endings. The ending on the main one, if you can find it here on YouTube, a couple other places that are playing it, the high seas. They have the second ending. Originally, when this movie was released with the first ending, the original ending, the movie was pulled after the first week because of the backlash that it got. That ending was removed and changed. The way it ends is supposedly they have a seance, and the main character, played by Lynn Holly Johnson, vanishes and then returns with the missing girl, who hasn't aged not one bit. The original ending is that a creature appears, which is done by little puppetry, a little bit of animation, and the creature it's like an alien, and it grabs Lynn Holly Johnson and takes her away, and they fly off to some alternate dimension world or something like that, where the missing girl is there, and she's able to release her from her imprisonment, and they end up returning back to Earth, which is, what was this creature and stuff like that. They didn't really explain it. But you think into the perspective. Creature was the Watcher in the Woods in version 1. A bright light was the Watcher in the Woods in version 2. So think about that for a minute when you put to the perspective of how this movie ends. And the reason that we mentioned the ending on there is that there was a remake in the 2000 era with Angelica Houston, and they did version 2 ending. That they were not going to do version 1. You would think, and they did this for Lifetime, you would think with special effects today that they would have been able to do version 1. See, that's the thing, with Hollywood. They put the movies out, and they don't let them go. Now, understand the time period for Disney. Disney has lost a lot of money in the early 80s on there, touting Black Hole, this movie, a couple of others. The second one we're going to be discussing in a minute. And Disney. It took a while for Disney to recover from this, and I think this was one of the reasons why Disney hurt on this particular movie, is because they changed the ending after they released the movie. That is unheard of. that you would rip the movie out of the theaters. It's already in the theaters. You've had some people, tout it. Some people have given it awards that it's one of the worst movies of all time, and it is not. I think it's the most misunderstood movie of all time, because the way, the eeriness, the darkness, it's got like a Lovecraftian feel to it. Some other people have said the same thing. It feels like Lovecraft in certain points, especially with the creature. And it is incredible that, Disney has not. I haven't seen this on Disney Plus. I don't think it's on Disney Plus. I might be wrong, but that's one thing I haven't seen on there. I mean, they have almost all the Kurt Russell movies on there from way back then, and a bunch of other series on there. But this happens to be one. I mean, Black Hole's in there too. Black Hole is on Disney Plus, but yet Watcher in the Woods is not. One thing these days, people try to do novel adaptations of certain novels. We've heard Twilight and many others. And most of them don't do too well. I mean, Disney had their fair share back in the 80s on there as well. And there was one particular one. This one is one of my favorites. And a lot of people will say, oh, this was not successful. This is about a couple of years after the Watcher in the Woods issues on there. Again, they tried to do something very dark, very sinister, and they tried doing it, and the screenplay was written by the man who wrote the book itself, Ray Bradbury himself. Ray Bradbury is a great writer of most unusual dark books that he's done in the many years. I mean, most of the people, when you look on IMDb and think about IMDb, they throw in some wrong classifications. They have it listed as a fantasy, mystery, thriller. This is more of a thriller / horror, because this is a really dark movie. And the movie itself is Something Wicked This Way Comes. And it also has a fantastic cast. Vidal Peterson, Sean Carson are the main characters on there. But you also have Jason Robards, Jonathan Pryce, Diane Ladd, Richard Davalos, Jack Dawson, Bruce Fisher, Aileen Gear, Pam Grier, James Stacy. I mean, there's some great people in this movie. It is a really, really good film. Some people have copied it. I mean, some people tout over to Stephen King's Needful Things. It's sort of a similar but different aspects of there, but I would never, compare that to Stephen King, Bradbury to Stephen King. Never on that. They're always two separate stories, but especially that particular storyline itself. But it's basically, it's about a small town, and a circus comes to town with a demonic proprietor played by Jonathan Pryce. That the circus sort of gives you your wishes. Some of the folks that live in the town. There's one character who wants to be beautiful again. Another one that was a football hero. He lost his leg, and he wants to be able to have his leg again. And there are many others who want changes in their life. And there are two boys who basically find out about the situation, and basically, because they're found out, the owner of the circus, called Jonathan Pryce, Mr. Dark, wants to whisk them away. I mean, there are some great special effects in this movie. There's some real darkness to this. I mean, it's very well done. The performance, Jason Robards, obviously fantastic character in this movie. So is Jonathan Pryce. I've loved a lot of stuff when he does villains in movies. I mean, I think, wasn't he a Bond villain? I believe he was a Bond villain at one point. He does it very well. The carnival itself, the way the setup, I mean, this is not something that's present day. This is basically in the olden days. I believe it was like 30s to 50s, somewhere in between there. I don't have the exact dates on there. But like I said, there's some great special effects, great content to it. Especially a lot when you have a lot of the people when they change and they end up to be cursed to the way they are. The whole, when the circus has the parade, that is so dark in itself. There is a parade it's almost like a funeral. It's a funeral procession in this, and it's so dark. I mean, Disney itself, when they did this, it didn't gross well. I saw this originally at the theater. My mom took me because I was in my early teens at this time. My mother took me to the theater to see this movie, and she said herself, this was pretty dark. It was a pretty dark movie. You know, I was liking stuff like this back then. I mean, you had these dark films that came out and you have to remember, this is a little bit different from, you have to remember the historical standpoint. The slasher film was king at the box office. You were starting to see stuff like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. You've seen all these type of slasher films start to come into play within the 80s. And, you know, they were king at the box office. But also you have a group of films to the side that were similar, like I said, Watcher in the Woods, Something Wicked This Way Comes, this was Disney, but many other films that basically showed off that they could make a horror film and don't have it that graphic, but still can be eerie, can be scary at points. I mean, you had to feel for the kids, the two kids in this movie, that basically they're being chased down by Jonathan Pryce in this, and the things that he wants to do to them on there. Like, you know, there's one kid, his name is Nightshade, and he says, "Oh, come with me, we'll make it Nightshade and Dark, or Dark and Nightshade's Pandemonium Circus." And, you know, he tries to convince him. And that carousel in itself is just amazing. That scene in itself, there is, I don't want to give it too much away, but there is a scene with the carousel that it's just so dark. Ugh. I mean, if you haven't seen this yet, do catch it. It is a great movie. I've only seen it on DVD. You can get it on DVD, I think, as low as $15, as high as $50. The VHS is still available out there for about $20. But I would say look around. Disney Plus, I don't think this is on Disney Plus at all. Like I said, both these movies, these are historical movies, and they need some love. Honestly, they need some touch up. If Disney, if they listen, if they could take a moment, spend some money, you could probably touch up the special effects, fix the ending on Watcher in the Woods, and bring it out properly. You could probably end up making some good money on it, because basically these are films people have not really seen. These are forgotten films. I mean, those of you who are connoisseurs of this genre, of the classics and stuff like that, you know people don't just watch these. I mean, I've been seeing lately a video or two of Watcher in the Woods that's been creeping up on YouTube, that there are some people that have been talking about it. And then there are others that basically they haven't talked about Something Wicked This Way Comes in quite some time. And the ones that have come out and talked about it have really discouraged people from seeing the movie. But it's a classic in itself. I mean, like I said, there are people who don't like Bradbury. You have to remember, Bradbury wrote this on. The execution of this movie could have been better. Same thing with Watcher Woods. Yeah, it could have been better. But for the time period, it's well worth it. I've seen lower budget movies, and movies that don't have a great premise. Very bad scripting, very bad acting, get Blu-ray releases across the board. We've seen this constantly, just in the last decade or so. But yet movies like this that are just, just thrown away. It's like they threw it away. They just threw it away. They don't want to know nothing of this because they said, it's touted a failure. Sometimes failures can be success down the line. There was a great movie called Eddie and the Cruisers. Didn't do well in the box office. What sold it? What eventually sold it and made it popular? The soundtrack. Like I said, if you have a kick-ass soundtrack, you can have a good movie. And that sold it. It really did. They touted a sequel, which the sequel wasn't that great. But the premise of the movie was very good. Most people didn't get to see it. I've always said with these older films, trust within yourselves. Go grab them. Check them out. Because this was a time when art overtook politics in the film industry. Because that's what it was. When you look at the older movies, you see it from an artistic point of view that these films were made. That's what it was. Now everything is blow everything up. Big explosions, politics, activism. All this stuff that's thrown into these movies these days. Gender swapping, character swapping, changing things around, and people are not liking it. We have to go back to when films were artistic, when you had great directors, like Orson Welles for once. Orson Welles, some great films that he made, and I tout, The Third Man. One day we're going to sit down and talk about The Third Man. Such a great film, great cast. Orson Welles, Joseph Cotten, well done. Very well done. Well shot. The lighting was fantastic. It's a dark movie because a lot of it takes place at night. And the lighting is phenomenally well done. And that's why I like these two. I haven't seen these in quite some time. I had to refresh myself before watching this. Because basically I wanted to talk about it, and we were supposed to slate this for later in the summer, but we said now with a lot of talk with Disney, I said I think this is the time we discuss about the dark side of Disney, the way when Disney did take chances. And that's the thing, Hollywood took chances here. From the 70s to the 90s, they took some great chances. They don't anymore. They don't. If it wasn't for the chances they took, we would not have some of the stuff that we have today. Some of the movies that were made that now we look toward that were made, that some of the stuff that's made now, especially the overseas stuff, you got some good stuff out there. And then you got some really bad stuff out there. A lot of stuff out of Hollywood. You have a lot of Hollywood writers that have been banished out of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You have a lot of Hollywood directors, writers that have been banished out of Hollywood because of their political ideology, and then they don't put that in their movies. That basically, if they happen to be conservative, they're just basically not well liked in Hollywood. But they said stuff that's out there is garbage. It's garbage. One guy said, hey, how many movies can you count that the ending ends with an explosion? Yeah, a lot of them. A lot of them. I mean, we've lost the artistic way of filmmaking. What are they teaching in the schools, in the film schools now? That's a very good question. So let's hope and pray that Disney can go back to its old ways. Take some chances. Take a loss every once in a while. I mean, you're taking losses now. You're spending money on programming and movies now that are not making bank. Why waste it on the stuff that basically people don't want? Try something new. Try something that people haven't heard of. There are tons of scripts on a desk somewhere with a good story out there that they're afraid to make it. So hopefully they'll think about it. Me, I doubt it. It's going to take independent producers just to bring us back to the artistic point of view. And you can see on, like I said, we use DaVinci Resolve here. There are plenty of videos of DaVinci Resolve, people out there that use it, and they explain, what you can do to film with this. There's some great stuff that you could be very artistic. It's very easy to use. You can't tout that it's the software. You can't tout that you're going to spend money on the software because a lot of the software is free now. You say, "Oh no, we only use Adobe. We only use Avid and all that." Yeah, you pay monthly. For the monthly that you pay, you can get a full version forever of DaVinci Resolve. Forever, $300. What you pay annually for that. Some you pay even more. So let's check over what's on my video shelf this week on our off the shelf segment. And we got a good one there too. Mel Brooks is back again. This week on the off the shelf segment, what is in mine there? Last week we talked about part of the box set that I've gotten for the Mel Brooks collection. We discussed 12 Chairs last week, which is rarely discussed around corners in the video world or online streaming. Actually, it's hard to get to watch it online on there. Not so many places have this. It was a very good movie. This week, this is another one which happens to be a great comedy with an all-star cast. And like I said in the opening, there's only one word of dialogue in the whole entire movie. The movie is the 1976 silent movie by Mel Brooks, and it stars an all-star cast, including Mel Brooks himself, Dom DeLuise, Marty Feldman. The main premise of this, that Mel Brooks plays a once great director. He's recovering from a drinking problem, and now he's down on his luck. His sidekicks, played by Dom DeLuise and Marty Feldman, pitch a big movie to the studio chief, played by the great Sid Caesar, to make a silent movie for the first time in 40 years. At first, the studio chief rejects it, but Mel Brooks says, let's get big actors in this movie, and it'll attract everyone to come watch it. And that's what the main premise is. But the bad guys in this movie, and I love the name of the bad guys in this movie, which is played by Harold Gould and Ron Carey. It's Engulf and Devour, who are trying to basically stop this from happening. Some of the people in this movie, they are actual main stars in this movie, great stars. Burt Reynolds, James Caan, Liza Minnelli, Anne Bancroft, Marcel Marceau, Paul Newman, Bernadette Peters, Chuck McCann, Henny Youngman, Charlie Callis. I mean, this is an all-star cast. It's funny as hell. And like I said, there is a joke in this movie, which let me put in this premise. The movie is called Silent Movie for a reason. There is no dialogue except one word in this entire movie. The movie is a silent movie. Yes, there are subtitles. You'll be able to see what's going on by what they're reading, because it is done like a silent movie. This is brilliant from Mel Brooks. It's one, people don't talk about this one too much. It is one great comedy with a great all-star cast. I mean, there are even musical numbers in this movie with no dialogue. I mean, can you think? No dialogue, but you have a musical number. I mean, Bernadette Peters is fantastic doing that. I mean, the music score behind this, it's well done. There's a great scene where DeLuise and Feldman dress up as flamenco dancers, which is just such a fantastic bit. Another bit is basically, Paul Newman loves to race and stuff like that. And there's a scene where basically they're chasing him on electric wheelchairs. It's a great chase on there. I don't want to give too much away on this, but there are so many gimmicks in this, including the drinking problem bit that Mel Brooks does. The names of the characters are really good. Like Mel Brooks' name is Mel Fun. Dom DeLuise is called Dom Bell. Marty Feldman is Marty Eggs. And like I said, the villains, played by Howard Gould and Ron Carey, are also great. Engulf and Devour. I mean, that it's a great premise. I mean, go out and get it. You should still be able to get the box set itself. I think the box set is the only Blu-ray version of this movie, but the DVD is still out there available for about $10. Or if you want the old-fashioned VHS version, it's about the same price as well. I mean, I've seen the price go up as high as $70 on it. I mean, take a look around. You should be able to find it for inexpensive. The box set itself has been gaining traction in price point. I've seen it as high as $250, and recently I've seen it as low as $50 to $70 on there. So do check it out. It is a great film. It is funny, and like I said, there's only one word of dialogue in the entire movie. So that's my off-the-shelf choice this week. Well, we've reached the part of the show where one of the most important parts is we hear from you. That's right, you, the viewer. So let's go over this week's comments, and we got a couple here on there. Let's start off with Brenda Chow. Pepe will never be canceled. Of course, we're talking about Pepe Le Pew. Yes, that's right. We all believe Pepe Le Pew, Speedy Gonzales, and all that. We will do our best never to let him get canceled. It is a good character. It's a good cartoon. And this is the problem. People don't realize, they try to put tags on all these characters and all that. It is a joke. It is a gimmick. There are those out there who don't understand this. They have it set in their minds. Oh, they see bad things everywhere. People make jokes. Okay, there are gimmicks. People don't drop anvils on people on a daily basis. Okay, the things that happen in cartoons are just to make levity of situations. Okay, Pepe Le Pew. If you know, the cat. There's ones where the cat starts to chase after Pepe. So remember that. Thank you, Brenda. Johnny Hernandez. Yes, that's right. Johnny's back again. Do you remember Monster HD channel? It was the best horror channel. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I've been to a couple of conventions here in New York City that the Monster HD channel was a part of. Always put on a good convention with the conventioneers that basically were... they were one of several different companies that did this horror convention at the Pennsylvania Hotel, which is across the street from Madison Square Garden. So it's a small venue, but hey, listen, had some great fun. Thanks again, Johnny. Saya Ian J. What am I afraid? I'm afraid this gets big. Remember Matsumo's warning? Yeah, we're going to see a push for PC. I mean, look at Funimation sneaking around Japan or even Sony. Jay, you are completely right. I mean, Toho is going to get to a point. A lot of these companies are going to get to a point where they're tired of a lot of these Western companies dealing with the IPs. You can't change things. You can't change things because you disagree with them, or you're going to try to push your political agenda into these things. They're going to get to a point where people are going to start suing. They're going to start taking away your business. You have people working for you. And I'm talking to Sony, and I'm talking to Warner, all these companies. You have people working for you that are just pure activists. They are not well versed in the business. They're not well versed on the product that comes, especially if they're voice actors doing overseas stuff. You know, what are they doing to the other stuff? Have they damaged any of the other movies that have come from overseas on there? That's why you see, like, especially movies on some of the streaming sites, that they don't have English dubs, because a lot of the film companies from overseas refuse to have English dubs done. I mean, there are some great movies. I just saw one the other night, The Night Comes for Us. Even though there's a little bit of English in there, it's mostly in Indonesian, Chinese. There was like 4 or 5 different languages in the one movie. It wasn't completely dubbed. Whereas there was a Spanish one that I saw. It was like the dubbing was really bad on there. What was that? I totally forgot. It was an action flick, but it wasn't that great at all. Thanks again, Jay. Next up, Game of You Won. Jupiter Legacy was one of the best shows I watched all year. Yeah, it was a good series. It was a good series. There were some issues I had on it. I thought the backstory, the flashbacks took a little bit too long to produce that story. From what I understand, in the comic book, it took less time. I think it was 6 pages that they did through this, but they extended it through the entire 8-episode arc. And what happened? They got canceled. You know, even though we're gonna get Super Crooks, it still got canceled. Thanks, Game of You Won. The Unwanted Critic. This one's going to be a long one, folks. There are a lot of shows out there who hate the show for reasons they didn't have anything to do with the show. They either wanted to be another version of the CW, the MCU, or they wanted The Boys. Some were upset with Mark Millar because he was critical of Batman versus Superman. The most sane reason I heard was from Grace Randolph. She said that the production budget was too high, which, yes, it was, and did not increase the number of subscribers to Netflix. There were other shows that people were going to subscribe for the cost of less money. For example, The Witcher. I think The Witcher was up there also. So the ratings have come out, and everyone was watching the show worldwide. It was the #1 show when it premiered all streaming services, even beating The Falcon and Winter Soldier. A lot smaller shows can beat The Falcon and Winter Soldier. Don't need a big show. It was top 10 for almost an entire month. I read the comics, so I know the source material they have to work with, and it was actually getting better. The origin story takes place in the 1920s and 30s and was just the beginning. I think of a lot younger people didn't like it because maybe they never passed high school history. I have to 100% agree with you on that. It also shows the negativity side of the celebrity culture that was hypnotized by the drugs, the pettiness. The one thing Grace said that it didn't agree with is with that she felt that it was not enough diversity. Well, I'm African American who has been reading comic books for more than 50 years, and I didn't read Batman, Superman, etc. because they were white. If they were a good black character that identified with it, great. But just because a character was black doesn't mean it was good. Dwayne McDuffie had an entire line of black comics. Most of them were very derivative of an already existing famous white characters. He had also had a character called Hardware, which was basically Black Iron Man. In other words, it was a ripoff of War Machine, who I don't think anyone thinks as a real hero, but more like a sidekick. So you've got two types of trolls: the ones who want diversity for the sake of diversity, and the other type who wants no diversity in an all-white male cast. It depends on the story. Bridgerton made a lot of money because it had an unrealistic, diverse cast. I think everyone can agree with historical that it was fantasy. Strange enough, the hero genre was a combination of science fiction, science fantasy, and regular fantasy. Had so many trolls to constantly take it seriously. Thank you, One Critic, for that long on there, but there are things I agree and disagree on. You know, the comic book industry was full of diversity for a long time. We hear these stories where it says, oh, films didn't have female directors, or they didn't have black studio owners. They didn't have this. They didn't have that. And the same thing in the comic book industry. But that's all a lie. If you go through the history, and I agree with you there, a lot of high school kids failed history for this reason. There are plenty of people of all denominations, whether it's religion, minority, gender, has worked in this industry. You have to remember, there was a point we didn't care, what you were, what you believed, and all that. We just did the job, made money for these companies, and that was it. I mean, there was a time period, you have to remember, if we go back to the days when everyone was being pointed to be a communist, I think that was the beginning of the fall for certain parts of Hollywood. Because you had situations where some directors had to hide their identity, and they made some great movies. Some won Oscars under a different name, and it took years later to identify them eventually of their accomplishments. And the funny part is, the people who were against them knew they made the movie, but they just couldn't prove it. And the thing is, I think this is the same thing that's happening now. You have a small group of people who basically want this, that, and the other thing. First of all, they're not fans. They plain and simple, I want to critic, they're not fans. They just push these things because they just, it's that old thing where, the guy, Robert Conrad, with the battery on the shoulder and says, go ahead, knock it off. That's what they want. They want you to be upset. They want you to get them even more pissed off on there. They want to destroy the things on there. The other day they were saying, we have women now in comics finally and all that. But no, they've been women for years in the comic book industry. For years. They tout back that, that Black Panther, finally we got a black superhero. I said, okay, what about Blade? What about Black Goliath? What about Mantis? What about, there's a long list of heroes that are of different ethnic origins. A lot of them are sitting on the shelves these days because, Hollywood doesn't want to touch them. The comic book industry doesn't want to touch them because they can't make anything new. They want to go back to the well and change everything, and they know that for some of them it's safe, but they don't know they've destroyed themselves utterly. Thank you again, Unwanted Critic, for that lengthy issue. Thank you again. Bug with one eye seeking is King the White, maybe? No. That's with Jupiter Legacy also on there. Isaac, 1990. 3 more years till we celebrate the 40th anniversary of Transformers in 2024. 5 more years till we celebrate the 40th anniversary of Transformers, the movie. I'm thinking in 2024, any Transformers anime that was never released in the US and dubbed into English will be properly dubbed into English or use English subs. This will include Headmasters anime because it'll be the first English dub that was a laughably and poor made one, and it needs a proper English dub from real professionals. Isaac, 1990, not too many professionals in the dub industry in the West. You probably have to go to Canada or maybe the UK. I mean, there are a couple here we can name on one hand that could do a good job of it. But unfortunately, when you're doing an English dub, it has to go through one particular company. Funimation Sony happens to be one of the big ones out there, and they control a lot of it. I mean, we're hoping now with Tubi TV and Netflix, we still have to be cautious with, that basically they will give a better English dub than Funimation's, Crunchyroll, all the others that they have done in the past. I mean, I miss the day of Ocean dubs. I miss the day. They weren't the greatest, but still they did a lot better than everybody else. Thanks again, Liger Fan. So Netflix spent a ton of money, which was all spent before they bought a awfully looking wig and stuck it on the head of the actress who played Chloe, and Jupiter's Legacy to cancel it and move on. I'm going to assume spending a crap load of money on Super Crooks. Good job, Netflix. Liger fan, I agree. I mean, I'm hoping it turns out good because I love the villains. One of the big things on there, Darkseid, Apocalypse, Magneto. You know, most people don't tout Magneto as a villain, but technically Magneto is a villain. You know, there are some great villains out there who have great arcs. And now they want to destroy those arcs and make them like, oh, that they've had a bad backstory. You know, the way they treated Thanos in a way. You know, the Thanos was okay, played okay, but it wasn't really the comic book Thanos. Thanos was a lot darker in the comics. And you got to remember, Thanos was also wanted the praise of death as well. So where was that arc? You know, they didn't really do that. And, you know, I top back to Cruella de Vil. See, what they're doing to Cruella de Vil is what they want to do with all the other villains. Give them backstories that you feel sorry for them because they had feelings and all that. There are people who turned into villains that had feelings, but most of the villains in these were evil to begin with. People don't have a backstory where they started out good and became bad. Those stories are separate. You know, you get that story from one of the Batman movies. You live long, you know, you either die a hero, or you live long enough to become the villain. Those are different types of stories. True villains are true villains. Darkseid is one of the proof of it. You think Darkseid had a good side to him? No, hell no. Thank you again, Liger fan. Snowy Days. I feel like for $20 million, the show should have been better. The show looks similar to CW's soup shows. CW costs less to make. I agree with you on there. $200 million. Let's be specific here. You know that a lot of the money went to the actors and to the writers and to the director. Special effects did get theirs, but remember, to do special effects these days, the price has been coming down. All you have to do is look at a lot of the software that's out. Look at Adobe, look at Avid, look at DaVinci Resolve on some of the stuff they do with the editing. DaVinci Resolve, we here at CutyCast Television on Saturday Pre-Flight, we edit on DaVinci Resolve. It's a quick edit in and out. There are some minor issues, but of course, DaVinci Resolve, Blackmagic, who owns the company, basically is always tweaking it and making it better and better. You know, there's only one thing I pay for on Adobe now is just After Effects. As soon as I learn the version that's on DaVinci Resolve, I'll be chucking After Effects because I have everything I need in one-piece software. And right now, I don't pay for the software; it's free. I don't need the $300 version. Eventually, I will get the $300 version because there are some tweaks in there that I would love to be working with. But for now, it is one of the best. Color grading, audio, everything. I mean, everything that I used to have in separate different programs, I have it in one program, all in one suite. You know, and if I had a bigger crew, we would pump out a lot more content on this channel. Believe me, for what this program can do. And think about it for a second. From a Netflix point of view, they have money. They spent $200 million on this. You know, they could have done much better for $200 million. Much better for $200 million. That's about 25 an episode. Figure they spent at least minimum $25 million an episode. They could have done a lot more. You know, sometimes they rush through these things. They don't take their time. They want to get it out. People want content. Thanks again. Saya and Jay's back again. Guess entertainment is almost dead. The reason I say almost is because Japan. There will be one day entertainment will be non-existent, and we have to find something new, same as gaming. Jay, I have to partially disagree with that. One thing about entertainment has been around since, the pre-dawn of man. All you gotta do is look at cave drawings. Cave drawings was basically giving out a story. Stories will never end, as if there are people who have is able to dream, to basically think of things that basically in their minds of stories. There will always be storytellers. We've been through the worst times in history, and we still create some great stories. We are going through a very hectic and very bad time right now. And there are those who are making some good stories coming out of, and like you said, out of Japan. Out of Japan, some great stories. Over here in the West, there are some small stories here and there. You know, a lot of them in the Comics Gate area that they put out some good stuff, some independent stuff. There's some independent movies out there that on there. There's some low budget stuff, that's coming out that people don't talk about much. And we still have this. We would have to get to a point in humankind to completely care no more. I mean, really, we would have to be completely almost mindless to not have any stories. Gaming, on the other hand, gaming is rough right now, but there are a lot of small independent gaming companies out there who, they can't pump them out as fast as the big AAAs, but they come out every once in a while, and some of them are really good. I mean, if you're on Xbox, Xbox has a lot of them on there, small independent stuff. I played a couple myself, and I've had some fun. My friend Pedro happens to be one of those that came from an independent company, and I had some great fun. And I forgot the name of the other one, which was like some bacteria creature on there, and that one I'm still trying to finish on there. There's some difficult points there, but I'll get through it. Thank you, Jay. And I want to thank everybody that basically has commented on there. Thank you very much for doing it. Please continue to comment. Thank you very much. When you converse with us and comment on the lines, I do appreciate that. One thing I have to say, because we've had a couple of trolls out there and stuff like that, please, if you have you want to give a voice to, give your comments on there, please keep the language to a minimum. We are, most of us are adults here, and some of us are young, but by spamming the comments line over and over again with the same thing and using foul language, you're not getting your point across. You're allowing YouTube to monitor you, because you don't realize, but YouTube, when you do something like that, YouTube monitors that, and they yank you before I could, yank you off, or the person I have monitoring some of our social media accounts, they've already done it. It's gone. That's why there's not a spam folder anymore. We used to have a spam folder that basically puts all the spam off to the side. Now it's all just two folders. It's only the regular comments line, the approved, and the one that needs approval. And also, those of you who keep throwing the adult stuff, YouTube's going to get to you. YouTube's going to get to you, because basically, I know I've seen a bunch of them, and it gets pulled immediately. As soon as I'm about to click it, it's already gone. I can't even get to it before there. So once again, thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. And also, before we go, what have we forgotten? Yes, we've forgotten. It's almost Saturday. That's why it's called Saturday Pre-Flight. So we have the Saturday morning cartoons, and then, if you want to enjoy the day, go out, enjoy the day, and when you come back, Sci-Fi Saturday night, and at 8 p.m. is Svengoolie. So, what is the movie of the week?
This week on Svengoolie,
Werewolf meet Frankenstein.
are they real?
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
Yikes! Find out how to make a monster on the next Svengoolie. Saturday night on METV.
That's right, the 1958 movie How to Make a Monster. Robert H. Harris, Gary Conway, Gary Clark, Morris Akram. Directed by Herbert L. Strock. If you're not familiar with the name, he did the film series I Was a Teenage Frankenstein, if you're not familiar with that one. In fact, I've never seen that one. I've heard of it, but I've never seen that. It is a good premise. It was rebooted in the 2000 era. Not so well. The original is very, very good. So that is the Svengoolie movie of the week, 8 p.m. Eastern on your local METV. If you don't have METV, check with METV.com. Find out what the local station is around you. If you don't, especially if you don't have it on cable, you should be able to get it by antenna. And it is an enjoyable show if you have not seen Svengoolie. I mean, we live on these stuff like Svengoolie, Creature Features, and stuff like that. Like I said, last on another episode last week, Creature Features had Tomb of the Blind Dead. It's still on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, just type in that. You'll find it under Creature Features. Such a great movie. Great Spanish movie. It is part of a 4-movie series. Technically, they don't interact with each other, but it's the same type of zombie types on there. They're hooded figures on horseback, except the one on the boat. There's one that's on the boat called the Ghost Galleon. They can't figure that one out. Why are there Templars on a ghost ship? That's the one, and that's what it is. It's dead Templars from the Crusades who have come back, basically done demon practices. They were hung and their eyes were plucked out by ravens. Yes, that's right. Yeah, it doesn't get that graphic, but they do pretty good. But also, How to Make a Monster is a good classic. This happens to be one of those, but people don't really talk about much. And if you haven't seen it, catch it. Like I said, 8 p.m. Eastern on Svengoolie on METV. So we reached the end of the show. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, this does re-air if you're watching this on YouTube. It does stay on YouTube for now and all of our social media platforms. It also will air later on ODYSEE in about a day or so, depending on the upload. The longer videos that we put up on YouTube takes a little bit longer to decode into ODYSEE. Sometimes we have to do a manual upload to get the show up and running, but we're also available on Minds and Gab. And once again, thank you for it. And once again, comment, subscribe, like, share this video. Have a good weekend. The weather has been good. We're getting into the summer. School's out. Well, school's been out for a year now, technically. But enjoy yourself. Take in some time, and then come back and watch some good programming. Also, if you want something out there that's a good movie, don't download it. Go out and buy physical media. Support the physical media. Those who work in the industry, because they're losing their jobs. Even if you buy it used, if you buy it from eBay used, because basically there are some great films out there that are hidden that most people don't talk about much. There's like a Peter Cushing movie called The Flesh and the Fiends. Most people don't realize on that. There are movies like Eaten Alive. There are a lot of vampire movies out there that are really good. If you like that type of film, if you like these classics, there's a ton of them. I mean, there are some on the streaming sites like Tubi TV and a couple of others that do have some of the great old classics. I always said we need a nostalgic channel. I mean, there is a Turner Classics app, but you have to have cable to have it. Some of it is available on HBO Max, including some Criterion Collection on there. But I think we need something dedicated to the real classics, just the classics alone. Just the true classics on there. I mean, Criterion has a good amount of them as well. So until next time, enjoy yourself. Thank you for tuning in here on Saturday Pre-Flight on QTCast TV. And we'll see you on the next one. See you next week, 10 p.m. Eastern, here on YouTube, Minds, and BitChute, and later on ODYSEE. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye now.
你别笑，最后赚。